What's poppin', guys? Welcome back to the Prime Sports Network. Today we're going to be talking some USFL football. They just had the draft conclude after 35 rounds where we get the initial rosters. Now, of course, there's going to be backups and other players who join the league late in the process and all that jazz. But right now we have a basic idea of what the rosters are most likely going to look like. And we're just going to go team by team and just give our thoughts on them. So first, coach of the Michigan Panthers, probably the most famous coach on this list by a mile, Jeff Fisher, Mr. 7-9 himself. And I, for one, am ecstatic to see Jeff Fisher back in football after constantly going 7-9 with the Rams. And not really much else to say except for they have a very meme-worthy coach in the league now.
Yeah. Jeff Fisher on the Michigan Panthers is going to be extremely fun to watch. It's really a matter of, does he win 7 games? Does he lose 9 games? Or does he just keep the record of having 2 less wins than losses? This is his first football job since he went 7-9 all those years with the Rams. So it's going to be interesting to see if he is even decent in today's game.
Yeah, it's definitely one to look at. Another interesting name here is Kevin Sumlin. He is the head coach of the Houston Gamblers. And to me, this hiring just screams that they want Johnny Manziel. Kevin Sumlin was the coach of Johnny when he was at Texas A&M. So, I mean, even if they don't get Johnny, it's pretty clear that that's what this hire was meant to do. Next coach is another name a lot of people might recognize, Todd Haley. He was a head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs for a couple years and then offensive coordinator of the Steelers and Browns. He was the offensive coordinator of the Steelers during the Killer Bees days. And I think it's kind of interesting. Obviously, they're not going to be able to secure Antonio Brown, but putting Todd Haley in Tampa, and we know that he's reached out to Antonio Brown to try and get him to come to this league. So it's clear that that hire was to try to entice Antonio Brown, even though it obviously didn't work out.
Yeah, I don't think AB would be. He's not the kind of guy that would come play in the USFL, or he would be because who the hell knows with him. I still think that Todd Haley's a really good hire. He kind of got screwed over with the Browns job, and when he was brought in by Hugh Jackson year 3, and then Hugh got fired 6 weeks in, and so did Todd. And then I think it was Greg Williams got made the interim head coach, which was hilarious. But I think Todd Haley really hasn't had the greatest chance. His relationship with Roethlisberger kind of went sour, but whose hasn't over the years? But yeah, Haley I think is probably one of the best hires, and we'll get into the when we get into the Bandits roster, I think that they might be one of the most deadly teams in the league.
Yeah, the next coach is the coach of the New Jersey Generals, and it is Mike Riley. He was a coach in the AAF for the San Antonio Commanders, and he used to coach the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Yeah, I think in the AAF, probably San Antonio Commanders were the second best team in that league, so that probably played a really big factor into it. But at the same time, they were only team that I think that they lost to was the Orlando Apollos. So
Next is Bart Andrus. Now, there's really not too much to say about Bart. I won't spend too much time on him, but he's bounced around literally every league you can think of: NFL, UFL, CFL, and now the USFL. So, a lot of experience coming into that Philadelphia Stars locker room. Next is going to be former Raiders running backs coach Kirby Wilson is going to be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Maulers. Now, I don't believe Kirby has any head coaching experience, but I know he's had an extensive NFL coaching career as a running backs coach exclusively. So he gets his shot here to be a head coach with the Pittsburgh Maulers. And then my favorite team, the Birmingham Stallions, with Skip Holtz. Now, obviously, Skip is son of legendary coach Lou Holtz, but Skip kind of is an interesting character in my eyes because I am a Mizzou fan, a topic that will be
Hmm.
brought up plenty of times today. And I remember when we were going to hire Eli Drinkwitz, Skip Holtz was one of the finalists.
Yep.
And it kind of became a joke about how Skip Holtz was going to be the next Tigers coach. Since then, he has parted ways with Louisiana Tech, and he is now the head coach of the Birmingham Stallions. And just because of like the inside jokes between Missouri fans, I'm cool with rooting for Skip Holtz, but I would have preferred the Stallions get Todd Haley.
Yeah, I think Skip Holtz, just from being in that inner Mizzou circle, I think that Skip Holtz, former Louisiana Tech coach, is definitely not the greatest hire, especially because I could not have imagined him coming in after Barry Odom, because that just would have added fuel to the fire there. So, I mean, if he gets into spring football, sure, like if he's successful, it's going to be very easy to root for them, especially since Birmingham is the only location that I think both me and you agree that is a good location for a football team, for a spring league football team. So it'll definitely be easy to root for the Stallions and Skip Holtz, but it's still probably not going to be a good hire.
And that brings us to our final coach, Larry Fedora, New Orleans Breakers coach, almost said Portland there. And he used to be the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels.
Yep. He was the coach of the Tar Heels from 2012 to 2018. Kind of fell off a cliff in the end, went 0-8 or 1-7 in the ACC both years, and only went like 2-9 and 3-9 in his final 2 years. But before that, he kind of built the program back up and was 11-3, I think, in 2015 or 16, and it was looking up, and then they just went to absolute shit, and then he obviously got fired. Then he went and was the Baylor. He was their offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for 2020, and saw at least a little bit of success there that landed him the job.
Yeah, I guess we should move on to the rosters now.
Mm.
And it would be silly to sit here and read off every name, but I know both of us have some specific names
Yeah.
that stand out to us. So if you want to just go through that, we can.
Yeah. So my chosen team that I'm going to be rooting for this year, not really based off of anything besides the fact that they don't have red in their color scheme, was the New Orleans Breakers. As mentioned before, Larry Fedora, former Baylor offensive coordinator and coach of the UNC. In the first round, they got Kyle Sloter, who I really didn't know, but I watched some film on him, looked up some of his stats. In just 4 preseason games, he had over 1,000 yards, had 11 touchdowns, and only 1 pick, and a 74% passing percentage. So Sloter's definitely a quarterback that I'm going to be a fan of. I think that he should be able to see pretty good success. Probably one of the more underrated quarterback names, especially since the Breakers had the last pick in the first round for the quarterbacks. At running back, a name that I knew beforehand was Larry Rose III. He was the running back at New Mexico State. In his career, he had 37 touchdowns, 5.9 yards per carry, and he's 26 years old. He had 14 touchdowns as a sophomore, and then he kind of fell off in his junior and senior year. Like he was really good his freshman and sophomore year, and then he was arguably worse in those final 2 years. But I remember him as a senior in New Mexico State. They got a bowl game, and I think he had like 274 yards or something ridiculous in their bowl game, and like 5 touchdowns. I think it was against San Diego State or something. But he's a name that I recognize, and I'm pretty happy that he's our running back. And then the other running back that they got was Jordan Ellis out of uh, Virginia. He had 1,000 yards his senior year, 4.8 yards per carry, and then he had 10 touchdowns last year or in his final season as well. Probably going to be a solid number two back. And then the skill positions, 3 names that I like. They got Taiwan Taylor, who has 6,000 yards in the or 600 yards in the NFL for the Tennessee Titans. He had 2 touchdowns, and he was a third round pick. He is currently 26 years old, and didn't play too much in 2019 and 2020, but he was on the Browns roster. They also got Chad Williams, who had 202 NFL yards and 1 touchdown. Both Taylor and Williams were third round picks, and Williams is 27 years old. He played for the Cardinals for a bit. And then Johnny Dixon, he is another wide receiver out of Ohio State. He had 669 yards as a senior and 8 touchdowns. And then the only other notes that I really have is on defense. You could really tell that the Breakers were prioritizing defense, specifically on the defensive line. They skipped a lot of their late round picks and only took defensive line players. I think they already have like 7 or 8 D linemen. They really stocked up on edge and defensive tackle. But some names that I liked in the cornerback class, Ike Brown, he was a cornerback on the Buffalo Bills roster. Name that I remember, Vontae Diggs is a linebacker, I believe, out of Virginia as well. And then Chris Okoye, I believe he's related to Christian Okoye, former running back of the Chiefs that broke some NFL records back then. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with the Breakers draft. They obviously prioritize defense, but I really think with a proven offensive coordinator for Baylor, they should be able to put together on offense as well.
All right, and moving on to my favorite team, the Birmingham Stallions. Not gonna lie, I wasn't really feeling this draft as it was going on. There were a lot of picks that seemed like no-brainers to me that the Stallions passed on. But I mean, I guess I just have to trust Skip Holtz. Their quarterbacks are Alex Mago and Jamar Smith. Now, or Alex Magoo, my bad. He was a draft pick of the Seattle Seahawks, and his last preseason with them, he just looked awful. But
Horrible.
in some earlier preseasons, he's made some difficult looking throws, and he made some pretty tough throws at Florida International. So I have faith that he has the talent, at least. Whether or not Skip Holtz can really coach that talent out of him, that's yet to be seen. And Jamar Smith, I was again disappointed with our second quarterback pick because I was hoping for a Chase Litton or a Luis Perez, somebody who could potentially come in if Magoo does not play well. But Jamar Smith played for Skip Holtz at Louisiana Tech, so it makes sense that he wants to bring in a quarterback who has been in his locker room before and will just really be able to help the team during this transition period. Uh, the receivers was kind of interesting to me. Their first pick was Victor Bolden Jr. I believe he had some time with the Buffalo Bills. Nice NFL experience there. And we also got Emmanuel Hall. Now, Emmanuel Hall is somebody I know very well. As I said earlier, I am a Missouri Tigers fan. And back when Drew Lock was slinging it for Mizzou, his best target was Emmanuel Hall. Emmanuel is undoubtedly an NFL talent, but he just has so many injury issues. He bounced around the NFL for a couple years. I know with the Texans
Bears.
and yeah, Texans, Bears, and football team, just bouncing around their practice squad and injured reserve. So I'm really interested to see Emmanuel Hall get a starting role on a team, and that's probably a jersey I'm going to be purchasing. And then on the defense, obviously the big name here is Scooby Wright. Uh, when he was at Arizona, Scooby Wright led the nation in tackles, and he's also bounced around the NFL with the Patriots, Cardinals, and Browns. So he is going to be a tackle machine for the Stallions defense. And punter Colby Wadman is a player that has played for the Broncos and has had a couple NFL stints, so you're getting a quality punter in this league. And their other special teamer, Brandon Aubrey, is a really odd pick to me because he's not a football player. He played soccer at Notre Dame. I can't find out if he played kicker in high school, which I assume he probably did. But still, it's just very interesting to select a player that hasn't played the sport yet.
hmm I think going back to quarterbacks, Alex Magoo, being a Seahawks fan, as listeners of previous podcasts may know, is absolutely atrocious. Watching those preseason games, I know from watching the Raiders game and the Broncos game, it was absolutely atrocious. I've never really seen anything in him, so I don't know too much about Jamar Smith, who's their other quarterback, but the Stallions probably have the worst quarterback room in the league.
Wonderful. Anyway, let's move on to the Houston Gamblers. Just do you have any names on them before I start?
I don't have too much on them. I believe JoJo Ward and Isaiah Zubar. Zubar's a name. He played for the Patriots. He played 2 or 3 games. I forget who was against, but I've heard the name before. Obviously, NFL experience there. Not too much on the defense. Chris Odom and Ahmad Gooden. They also stacked up on the defensive line, it looks like. 2 names that I've recognized there. Yeah, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so everyone wants to know about the quarterback position. Their quarterback is Clayton Thorson. Clayton didn't really do anything at the NFL level. He was selected by the Eagles and then cut shortly after. And he is the all-time wins leader for Northwestern. He's probably the best quarterback to ever come out of there. The only other quarterback that really comes to mind is Trevor Siemian. So Northwestern fans are definitely going to be tuning into Gamblers games to check out Clayton Thorson. But outside of that, there's not really too many names that stick out to me. I know Andrew Soro, the safety, has spent some time with the Chiefs, and Azim Victor, the outside linebacker, has spent some time with the New York Giants. But other than that, not really an impressive roster from the Gamblers. I think the next team we should talk about is the one that we probably agree has the best roster, and that's the Tampa Bay
Yes,
Bandits.
by
Uh,
far.
yeah, if you want to go ahead and read out your
Yeah.
names on.
So originally we were Battlehawks fans in the XFL, so we all saw Jordan Teamu get drafted at number 2, and we realized that the Bandits were probably going to be a good team. They probably have the best head coach in the league in Todd Haley, and then you pair it with, in my eyes, the best quarterback in this league. Teamu spent a little bit of time with the Chiefs, bounced around practice squads in the NFL. But he's coming back to his roots in spring football. Another name that is worth mentioning, Eli Rogers played in that Todd Haley offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Another name that is very recognizable there. BJ Emmons, name that I've heard before. And then on the defense, Deshaun Bosby, I believe they got. Uh,
Yeah, Devonte.
yeah, Devonte Bosby. Really good cornerback for the Broncos for a while. Don't know why he's not in the NFL. He was probably one of the most underrated players in the league. And then Obi Melifanu, absolute Madden legend at bare minimum. Spent a little bit of time with the Raiders, but he is a massive safety who is going to be uh, probably a game wrecker and a really good safety for them.
Oh, I was wrong. Devonte Bosby is on the Generals, but
He's on the
filling out
Generals.
the
Yeah.
Bandits roster, 2 names that stick out outside of Eli Rogers being the obvious is John Franklin III. Many people know him from his time on the show Last Chance U. He was a quarterback, but he moved to corner for the NFL, and it looks like he's moved to wide receiver. So, but John has always been a really good athlete, so I'm sure that the transition is going to work out just fine. And they also have Vinny Papali, who is the son of Vince Papali of movie fame from the movie Invincible. Uh, a recognizable name on the line for me is Damian Mama, who used to be a guard for the Chiefs. I know him pretty well. And Derek Abrams Jr., cornerback, is another player who played for Last Chance U. So that's another name that some people might
Yeah.
recognize.
I think one other name that people might recognize is if you're a fan of The Office. I am not, but Michael Scott is the name of a defensive lineman for the Tampa Bay Vipers, or for the Tampa Bay Bandits. Vipers was the XFL.
A lot of horrible jokes about to be made about him.
Yes.
All right. Michigan.
Panthers. Yep.
Yep.
All right. I'll start this off. Shea Patterson and Paxton Lynch. Paxton Lynch is a Seahawks legend. He actually did play good in the preseason with the Seahawks. Uh, he had a brief stint in the CFL. I believe he got cut for playing too much Fortnite instead of watching game film. So if you can get that under control, then maybe he might be good. He definitely has the talent. They also got Shea Patterson, Michigan legend, at the college at least. Didn't really pan out too much in the NFL and bounced around some practice squads, and he's not really doing too much. Ray Bolden, that's a wide receiver name that I recognize. And then really on the defense, there's not too many names. Connor's going to be a lot more educated in all of this, basically. But yeah, there's not too much on the defensive side of the ball either.
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm more educated. I'd just say that they did a poor job drafting defense.
It's fair.
Uh, the only names really on here are the quarterbacks and tight end Joey Magnifico, who I believe played in the spring league. But yeah, the quarterback situation for the Michigan Fighting Jeff Fishers is kind of interesting to me because you have Shea Patterson, who was the first pick in the draft, and to me, this is just trying to appeal to Michigan fans. I don't really see the upside with Shea Patterson. He frankly was not good. He was a 5-star quarterback heading into Ole Miss, lost the job to, I think it might have been Jordan Ta'amu, transferred to Michigan, wasn't that great. He signed with the Chiefs, and I was furious about it, and they cut him pretty quickly. And then he played for, I believe it was the Aviators of the Spring League. Didn't look too impressive, but here he is back in Michigan, well, so to speak, with Jeff Fisher. And then the other quarterback, Paxton Lynch, who uh, I guess you could call him like Jamarcus Russell-esque. He just never has really been committed to the game of football, and that's why his Broncos career kind of fell apart. He, like you said, would watch Fortnite instead, or would play Fortnite instead of watching game film. And he most recently got cut after an extremely short stint with the Saskatchewan Roughriders because he refused to get vaccinated. So, because of Canadian COVID policies, he couldn't travel with the team.
Huh.
So yeah, might be some issues there with Paxton Lynch, and that
Yeah,
might be why he fell to the last pick.
that wouldn't surprise me.
All right, next team we have is the Pittsburgh Maulers, and I think this one's kind of interesting for one player in particular.
Yeah. Kyle Laletta is a really solid quarterback. He was a really good prospect. Connor, you know more about him as well. Davon Smith, that is a running back that I'm familiar with. Pretty solid player. Chidi Okiki, I believe, didn't he spend a little bit of time with the Chiefs, I believe?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Outside of that, again, not really too many names that I recognize. Tyson Graham and Malcolm Howard are two linebackers that are pretty solid. But again, outside of that, Pittsburgh, bunch of guys, led by a pretty interesting quarterback prospect.
Yeah, it doesn't appear like they even have kickers or punters, which is kind of odd, but they do have a long snapper. But Kyle Laletta is somebody that I'm definitely going to be rooting for super hard in this league. And that is because I remember watching him at the Senior Bowl was the first time I had ever seen from him. This just random quarterback from Michigan came in and showed up any big time prospect there was, and he instantly became a super sleeper for me. I thought that he could have been the next Dak Prescott and been the guy to really one up the other quarterbacks in the class. If I'm not mistaken, that was the
Giants?
class. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
drafted by the Giants in the 4th round. But if I'm not mistaken, that quarterback class was the one with Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and Josh.
Lamar.
Yeah, and Lamar. And it sounds weird to say at the time, but or it sounds weird to say nowadays, but at the time, people weren't super high on Lamar Jackson.
Mm-mm.
So I thought that Kyle Laletta had a legitimate shot at being QB1. I know he's played for the Browns and Giants in the preseason. I don't think he's looked bad, and I also think that he might have some off the field issues with DUIs, but I might be wrong on that. But I'm really hoping to see him ball out in this league
Yeah.
because I think he's the most talented quarterback in this league.
Yeah, he's originally from Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania, so we've seen this with the Panthers. They are trying to appeal to the geographical area. So getting a Pittsburgh or a Pennsylvania native to play for Pittsburgh is definitely something that would probably bring in viewership.
Yeah, next team is the Philadelphia Stars.
Woo.
Uh,
I'll pull up their roster real quick. They got Bryson Scott and Case Cookus. They probably have the best names throughout their entire roster. They got Bug Howard at tight end, who didn't he played in the XFL, correct?
he played in the XFL, AAF, and Spring League. He's a
Yeah.
seasoned veteran at
He
this.
he knows how to play around in the spring leagues. So Bug Howard, that's a name to look out for. And then I believe on the defense they got Gus Cumberlander, who there have already been memes galore about. But he's a pretty solid defensive end. And then outside of that, again, not too many names on the defense. This is a very offensive heavy league. Devin Gray, Jordan Sewell, and Brennan Eagles. Again, wide receivers are strong.
Yeah, the names that stick out are definitely Brian Scott and Bug Howard, with an honorable mention to Case Cookus just for
Mhm.
the names. But Brian Scott is definitely going to be someone that stands out. You know, we've talked about other quarterbacks that have had success in the spring league. Like I've mentioned Luis Perez several times. We've brought up Jordan Teamu. But Brian Scott was the two-time MVP of the spring league, which I've mentioned a few times. It wasn't like the AAF or XFL where they had uh where the players were being paid and they had big name coaches. The spring league is just a league put on where they have generic team names and they play out of either San Antonio or Indianapolis,
Mhm.
and it's just guys who pay to play and to try and get their name out there. And Brian Scott came from this teeny tiny school, but came out, won a couple championships, won league MVP, and I think that he is set up to be very successful in this league, and maybe he can be one of those guys that uses this league as a pathway to the league if he
Sure.
balls out like he did in the spring league.
Yeah. I think that the Stars, yeah. I think that they have a weaker roster, but at the same time, I think that they're definitely a team with seasoned veterans of the spring league, Brian Scott and Bug Howard in particular. They could definitely throw it together and be a solid team. But moving on to the final team here, I believe it's the New Jersey Generals.
Yep, the
Yep.
team that Donald Trump used to own.
So at quarterback, they got Ben Holmes and DeAndre Johnson. I don't know too much about them, but the player that I do know a lot about is Jamon Moore, who is another Mizzou wide receiver. Uh, he drops the ball so much. Uh, I was never a big Jamon Moore fan when he was at Mizzou, and then I believe he had a very brief stint in the NFL. He got drafted by the Packers in like the fifth round, and I made fun of the Packers then. And he didn't. I don't even think that he made it out of training camp because he's not that good of a player, I don't think.
He's
So,
pretty bad.
yeah. I mean, it'll be cool to see another Mizzou player get a chance in the league, but not really too much there. Chris Orr is a middle linebacker that I am aware of. Bryson Young uh, is a defensive end for them, so that might be a little confusing. Might get a little bit of a Josh Allen on Josh Allen situation. They got Devonte Bosby, who I'll give this piece on him again. Really good in the AAF, or was it the Orlando Apollos?
It was the Commanders,
Commanders.
not the
Really good
Washington Commanders.
at the Washington Commanders. San Antonio Commanders. Really good for them. And then he was on the Broncos team for a while, was starting for them. I think he got hurt. Was it a torn Achilles or something? And he's kind of just fell out of the league since. But he deserves a shot. Definite bare minimum in the USFL, but he really should be playing in the NFL. There's no reason that he shouldn't be.
Yeah, just looking at this roster for me, there's not, well, there's more names than on some of the other rosters. I'm not going to pretend that I know anything about Ben Holmes. He was a D2 quarterback who played in the same conference that Luis Perez did, and Luis is obviously the only quarterback I know from there. But DeAndre Johnson is a quarterback with Last Chance U fame, so I'm hoping that DeAndre Johnson is able to beat out Ben Holmes for the starting spot. So that would be good for TV viewership, getting Last Chance U fans watching the games.
Mhm.
And it's just also more interesting when you know who the quarterbacks are. And I don't know who Ben Holmes is. And then Mike Weber, uh, former Ohio State running back. But the thing I know about Mike Weber is he was on the Chiefs practice squad when they won the Super Bowl. And he hawked his Super Bowl ring for, I want to say, like 15K as soon as he got it. So, yeah, not a fan of Mike Weber. And like Braden was saying, Jamon Moore, wide receiver from Missouri, he's shit. He can't catch the ball. He's fast enough to get open, but he's not going to catch it.
Nope.
Darius Shepard, another wide receiver for them. He had a stint with the Giants, so that's an interesting pick there. And Nick Truesdale. I know the name and I know he's made plays, but I cannot say I know for sure where he was at. I want to say he played in the XFL, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah.
And outside of that, um, it's worth bringing up Devonte Bosby again. If you were going to gamble on who is going to be the defensive player of the year in this league, it's going to be Devonte Bosby. You can see that this is a very offensive focused league. I don't think they really broke the bank for any of these defenders. And you could see if you were following along with the draft, the pass rushers didn't seem to have any NFL experience. Well, all of the linemen seem to have NFL
Mhm.
experience. So it's going to be a pass heavy league, which means you're going to want a good corner. And Devonte Bosby is likely leaps and bounds above everyone else. The next
Yeah,
best corner is probably Jamar Summers. But
maybe.
I had the opportunity to meet Devonte Bosby back when he was on the Chiefs a few years ago, and he was a super nice guy, very down to earth, and he was probably my favorite player to get to talk to. So it was really cool to see him ball out in the AAF, and then seeing him play well with the Broncos for a few years there was really nice to see. Nobody deserves
Mhm.
success more than Devonte Bosby, and I hope he gets back to the NFL.
Yeah, he's definitely a player that deserves it. But outside of him, I don't really think that the Generals have a strong roster.
Yeah, I'd say they definitely need to start DeAndre Johnson if they want a shot.
Hmm.
They have kicker Nick Rose, who has NFL experience, but that's about it.
Whoopee. I think another player, another Mizzou player that we missed on mentioning was Paul Adams, who is a offensive tackle for the New Orleans Breakers. Those were the only three guys from Mizzou that got drafted into the league. So those are names that we'll be watching out for specifically. But in general, this is like you said, it's going to be a very pass-heavy league. We really didn't recognize too many of the running back names. I believe the son of, I think it was Fred White, Hall of Fame,
Fred Taylor. It
yeah,
was Fred
Fred
Taylor.
Taylor, Hall of Fame running back. His son signed with the league. I don't think that he got drafted. Haven't really seen too much. I'd say that the Breakers probably have the best run game, just off of even a little bit of research, just looking at it. But yeah, there's not many running backs. There's definitely very wide receiver heavy, very quarterback heavy. The defensive linemen and even the offensive linemen are names that have little to no NFL experience really on the D line, like you said. And then the only big names, secondary names that we see are Devonte Bosby and Obi Melifanu.
Yeah, Obi Melifanu was somebody that I forgot to mention. I think it's because you mentioned him,
Hmm.
but he's a great physical talent, and he is exactly what this league needs: physical talents who didn't succeed for for one reason or another. But you can definitely see that they are good players if they're coached right or if they stay healthy or any of the other thousands of scenarios that could happen to these guys. So Melifanu is a perfect example of why people should tune into this league.
For sure. But with all of that, do you want to get into do you have any power rankings for the league?
I wouldn't say that I necessarily have a full power rankings due to the fact that a lot of these players I just don't know, you know. Uh, but I will say, based on what I do know, I think the Tampa Bay Bandits are going to run away with this league.
Yeah. I think we got that idea very early on. I kind of mapped out a brief power rankings just off of baseline knowledge of some of the players. I had Stallions at 8, Panthers at 7, Generals at 6, Stars at 5, Gamblers at 4, Maulers at 3, Breakers at 2, and then Bandits at 1. But simply just because they have Jordan Ta'amu, Todd Haley, Eli Rogers, Obi Melifanu on defense, just they have those recognizable names who like actually have NFL experience. I think that they're going to be a really good team. The only team that I think has a shot to put up with them, not biased, but like legit the Breakers, because they have by far the best wide receiver room in the league with Taiwan Taylor and Chad Williams. So if Kyle Sloter can put up numbers like Jordan Ta'amu, then possibly the Breakers could stand a chance. But also because the Maulers have Kyle Laletta, I think that they'll be another team that's probably going to be pretty solid.
Yeah, I think that the Breakers are going to be a pretty good team. Like you said, Chad Williams was a Chief to start the year this year,
Yeah.
so I know him a bit. And Taiwan Taylor, I remember him being really good for the Titans, and then they traded him to the Browns, and I think he was just really far down on their depth
Yeah, he
chart.
didn't do anything for him. He played like 3 games.
And I didn't he have an injury history? I might be wrong on that,
Yeah,
but
he only played in he was active for 10 games, but he only played in 3 of them, so he was either just inactive or he was hurt.
yeah, so if you get the Taiwan Taylor that we saw with the Titans, that's the best receiver in this league by a mile. And Kyle Sloter is thought of very highly from Broncos fans and I believe Vikings fans
Yeah.
too. Coming out of the draft, he was compared to Jimmy Garoppolo. So he's not going to do anything insane, but he's going to make the right read and he's going to
Yeah.
win you games. And he has the weapons to do so.
Yeah, they've built the team around him for him. You got him 2 pretty solid wide receivers, possibly what could end up being the best receiver in the league. So the team's really built to just any quarterback could come into that position and win, I think.
Oh yeah, I feel like Kyle Sloter is definitely going to be a name that really gets elevated because of this
Yeah.
league.
Think he could. I don't think that he'll be like a PJ Walker, but he could kind of be like a Taylor Heineke type name. They have the same kind of background and history. They both were quarterbacks for the Vikings, and didn't, and then fell out of the league. And hopefully they show up in the spring football league.
But if we had to pick a PJ Walker type player, which honestly, I view these spring leagues as all just one league at this point because there's a new one every year. Hopefully, we get some sustainability with a potential USFL XFL merger, but I won't hold my breath. But I guess the PJ Walker Award for best MVP or best player, I should say, is likely going to be Jordan Ta'amu.
Yeah.
Just like we said, based on the coaching, the weapons surrounding him, and the clear talent that was obviously there last year.
Yeah.
I think that he's going to be great.
He was really good in a Chuck Long offense for the St. Louis Battlehawks. So if you put him in a Todd Haley offense with good weapons like Eli Rogers, I think that you are going to see Teamu flourish. And I think he's going to get more than just a practice squad spot on NFL rosters.
Yeah, he'll probably end up being like a QB 2 or 3 at least.
Yeah.
And for the reference to the Chuck Long offense, see, Chuck Long has the philosophy of if the running game doesn't work,
Keep
run it.
doing it.
Yeah, like down 8 points with 2 minutes left in the game, you're running halfback draws when you still have one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league, Todd Haley's not going to do that.
Nope. He's a very pass-heavy offense guy, which is good.
Yes. Yeah, that's going to be exactly what Te'amu needs. And hey, he didn't exploit the Antonio Brown connection, but perhaps the Le'Veon Bell connection?
Mm, Le'Veon is not insane, and he has too much of an ego to do that. So I don't think that he would.
It'd be definitely an interesting
Yeah.
signing there. Worth a shot.
I mean, you gotta try recruiting. Maybe Big Ben would be willing to become a quarterbacks coach because he's not doing anything now.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Big Ben's probably just going to head into the sunset.
That's what I'd assume. So he might get into coaching later on. But outside of that, I don't really have too much else to add if you want to say anything.
Nope, I think that about does it for today.
Alrighty. Well, if you made it this far and you made it to the end of the video, I want to thank you so much. I'm Braden Dowers. You can follow me on Twitter at ShowMeBaseball or at Braden Dowers. Connor, I'll let you plug yourself as well.
Yeah, I make some USFL content over on YouTube, youtube.com/PrimeConnor. I'll probably make a video breaking down the roster too. And you can follow me on Twitter at Brady Reeks, where it's not necessarily USFL content, but my Twitter is great.
Yep. Make sure to follow Prime Sports Network on Twitter. Make sure to follow them on here as well. And we'll catch you in the next podcast. Thank you so much.